back to the 2022 North American Championship for the Digimon card game.
A pretty spicy matchup. We are into not only undefeated territory, but I think all these players will be making top 32. Almost guaranteed by this point.
But that's very exciting. Yeah, I
Yeah.
did not think about that. Benjamin from Canada. Oh, yeah, 7-0.
Yeah, 7-0 because round 8.
Really
He's really strong.
Swing. We have one final block.
You get to choose what you save. 5, 6, 7.
And that's gonna be game. Jesus Altamirano taking it 2-0 against Benjamin.
Oh, hey, that's me. Hello everyone, my name is Ben, and the title is not clickbait. I know, it's crazy. I was that Machinedramon player. No, not that one. Now, I'll be honest, the placing that I got wasn't exactly what I was looking for because I was so confident in my deck profile. But seeing you guys support me over in the comments on Facebook, Reddit, Twitter made me very happy, and honestly, I owe it to you guys for getting me this far. So let's go ahead and give you the deck profile anyways. Now, to give you a little bit of backstory as to why I brought this deck to the tournament, well, we have to go back to the very beginning. It all went back to after I won my national championship invite with Dorimon. I had to look ahead into the meta and see what exactly I would have to look against. And obviously, the #1 contender for the best deck of the entire format is none other than Black Guardromon. Now, I myself am a bit of a black player, obviously, so I thought, you know what, let's go ahead and try it. I'm okay with black being the best deck of the format, and let's go ahead and see how well it does. And would you believe me if I told you I did not like playing with Black Guardromon? The deck, while it is in fact very strong, I was already able to see that it has quite a number of weaknesses. And because it's looking to be the best deck of the format, people are definitely going to be studying up into understanding how the deck works, as well as how to counter it. And also that would mean if it's the best deck of the format, you might see a lot of mirror matches. And after a 4-hour session, I'm trying to learn that mirror match, I thought to myself, yeah, no, this mirror match is fucking boring. So I had to look and see what other decks possibly exist. And obviously I have my little baby pet deck, which is Megadramon, and I started looking over at what the new cards can do for the Machinedramon deck, and I found, wait a minute, this deck is honestly really good. It beats all the counters of Black Guardromon, and it by itself is a fairly competent deck if piloted right. Unfortunately, its worst matchup is none other than the Black Guardromon, so I would needed to lap as much as I possibly could to make sure I could consistently beat Black Guardromon. And this is what I came up with. So let's get into it, shall we? As always, I got myself camera #2, so that way you guys can see my face as well as see me show some cards around. And as always, for all my deck profiles, I do in fact gotta show off the boss monster first. We run 4 copies of the brand new Chaosdramon from EX3. I'm pretty sure all of you Megadramon enthusiasts know exactly what Chaosdramon does, but for those of you who don't, he has the effect where he can digivolve on top of Megadramon for only 1 cost, which is very useful. And on play or when digivolving, you may place up to 3 red or black cyborgs with different numbers underneath it as a source, and then for each one we put underneath, we trigger digivolve 1 on one of our opponent's Digimon. So potentially if we manage to put 3 underneath, we can actually slow our opponent down by digivolving one of their Digimon by 3. Very solid. And all turns when this Digimon would be deleted or returned to hand or bottom deck, we are able to burst 2 level 5s from our sources instead. Very useful in this meta, because a lot of the times that when our opponent is going to be trying to get rid of our Machinedramon, they're going to be mainly using removal like deletion, whether it be by battle or by card effect, bouncing, or bottom decking. So all in all, this is going to be our main boss monster to go into because it is the most stickiest. And it also combos very well with the rest of the level 6s that we are going to be showing very soon. And of course, course, not only do we run Chaosdramon, it won't be a Mugendramon deck if we don't run none other than the good boy Mugendramon himself from EX1. And as you can see, I did manage to get myself a gold copy of the very fancy boy, and I only need one more in order to complete my deck for BT12. So if you guys have any copies, maybe you should hit me up. So I'm pretty sure you guys all know what this card does by now, but for those of you who surprisingly don't know, he has the effect where on play you may put up to 5 red or black cyborgs from your hand or trash underneath him as a source, and for each one we put underneath, we're able to gain 1. Key note that it only works for on play and not on Digivolve, so that means we're going to be heavily relying on hard playing him in order to get that effect off. And also has the all turns effect of this Digimon cannot be reduced. Very useful against decks like Yellow that are able to reduce our Digimon, but they weren't really that popular in this meta. And has the other effect of all turns. When this Digimon would be deleted, we can just trash 2 level 5s from his sources in order to keep him around. Now, the reason why we run 3 copies is not only because we want to hard play him, we actually get some benefits from actually evolving into him in raising. And I will get into the reason why we want to do that when we get to the combo tutorial of this deck. But we at least run 3 copies just so that we can see him as often as possible, and he combos in very well with the rest of the options in order to make sure that we can get rid of whatever our opponent has and control our opponent's board. But that's not all for level 6s, we still have one more to show you guys. I do in fact run 3 copies of the brand new BT11 Mugendramon as well. Now this guy is incredibly powerful and is the reason why I named the deck I did, which if those of you who don't know, is called Ishizu Mugendramon. Now pretty sure only the Yu-Gi-Oh players would understand where that came from. But let's get into the effects, shall we? For those of you who don't know what it does, it has the effect of when Digivolving or on play, reveal the top 5 cards of our deck. We get to add 1 analog man from among them into our hand and add 1 cyborg or machine in its traits in our hand, or we can place that machine or cyborg underneath it as a source and trash the rest. Now this card worked wonders in the tournament. This guy is our bread and butter. This is going to be our main target that we want to evolve into because it literally says on evolve or on play, just trash the top 5 cards of our deck. And as you know, the Mugendramon deck is a deck that thrives on its cyborgs being in our trash. So being able to mill 5 and potentially search for any missing pieces that we need is very powerful. But that's not all that he does. He also has the effect where on deletion, as long as we put an analog man in our field at the bottom of our deck, we can then play a Machinedramon from our hand for free. Now that's not restricted to the BT11 Machinedramon. That of course includes the EX1 Machinedramon. So if we're able to get him deleted while we have an analog man on field, we could potentially play a Machinedramon from our hand without paying the memory cost, and then his on play effect will trigger, allowing to potentially put 5 cyborgs in during our opponent's turn. And as you know, he's able to gain memory, which means we could potentially gain 5 memory on our opponent's turn, potentially ending our opponent's turn outright. So just the sheer amount of combos that you can do with this card is incredibly powerful, and that is exactly why we run him in 3 copies, just to see him as often as we possibly can. And he can even unbrick your hands at times when it's just hard playing him for 11. It may give our opponent a lot, but if they aren't able to answer it as soon as possible, they might just lose the game outright. And now that you guys are able to see our boss monsters, it's time to get into the meat and potatoes of the deck and see how exactly does this deck work. And as you know, the deck focuses on mainly having level 5s. So let's start with going off on all the level 5s that I run in my deck. We're going to start off with the 1-ofs, of course, because these are mainly the cards that we're going to be using to toolbox in order to make up for certain matchups. So we do in fact run 1 copy of the EX1 Metalgreymon, 1 copy of the ST12 Volcanomon, 1 copy of the BT6 Megadramon, 1 copy of the Gigadramon, 1 copy of the Megadramon, and 1 copy of the Metalmamemon. Now all these have their own very specific features. Obviously the Metalgreymon is very useful, being able to evolve on top of red or black, and also being able to give our Machinedramon piercing. It is very useful for when we attack our opponent's Digimon and try to control our opponent's board, which this deck can do quite easily. And the Volcanomon as well, giving our generic security attack +1. And the reason why I run it over the EX1 Megadramon is because he himself has the blocker ability, which can be very useful for slowing our opponent down. And it's also a black card, which is kind of a hint of what the spicy tech of this deck really is. We also have the 1 copy of the Megadramon, just a generic 2k buff, and as well as being able to treat it as black, so evolving on top of red or black will not brick our hand. And I think it's very useful to get power in this meta. And this meta is incredibly powerful that our stack is able to run over our opponent's Digimon no matter how big they possibly can be. and the 1 copy of the Megadramon just to give generic inheritable blocker, just to respect decks like Guardromon, Guardromon, and of course the Cross Heart. The reason why we have to run generic blocker as well, because keep in mind the best deck of the meta is going to be Guardromon, which also has the ability to de-digivolve. So being able to give ourselves generic blocker to our Digimon after it gets de-digivolved is going to prove to be very, very useful. And that is also the reason why we don't run the EX1 Andromon as well. Same logic for the Gigadramon as well. Generic reboot is going to be very, very powerful, and it also has the main effect of jamming. Having the main effect of jamming will allow us to swing at our opponent's security without worrying to die, and we can actually take advantage of our when attacking inheritables that we'll get to very, very soon. And lastly, of course, the Metalmamemon. This is the only one of the EX1 ultimates that we run here, being able to trash the top 3 in order to look ourselves for a level 6 machine type and add it to our hand. And the reason why we only run 1 copy of these types of level 5s is because majority of the time our deck is going to be focusing on evolving and raising. So majority of the time we're not going to be able to get our when digivolving effects for our ultimates for the most part. So it's important that we have better generic ultimates that we can go into. But he does have a very, very good inheritable still in being able to pop cost 5 or less Digimon. So in case their opponent tries to go as wide on us with a bunch of small bodies, we can clean up whenever it's needed. But that's not all for level 5s. We do in fact run 2 copies of the brand new BT11 MetalTyrannomon. This card is phenomenal, and I especially love it in this deck, especially at 2 copies. He has the effect where, when digivolving or on play, for each green or black tamer that we have in play, suspend one of our opponent's Digimon, and then we can just select one of our opponent's Digimon, and it cannot be unsuspended and during our opponent's unsuspend phase. And that is a very, very powerful effect. If, say, they were on a boss monster that really gets a lot of value in the following turns, just being able to suspend it and make sure they can't actually do anything with it on the following turn is very good for buying us time. But that's not the main reason why we run it. The reason why we run it at 2 copies is because for the all turns, once per turn, when this Digimon deletes an opponent's Digimon in battle, we trash the top card of our opponent's security stack. This by itself is able to check decks like security control, and because we have the all turns effect, being able to delete our opponent's Digimon on our opponent's turn is also going to be punishing them as well. Trashing our opponent's security is one of the best forms of putting pressure, and having it work on both turns is just too valuable to pass up. And for the other level 5s, we run 2 copies of the BT1 Metalgreymon. Now, keep in mind this is a red Digimon, so that means we're not going to be able to evolve it normally on top of our stack. So that by itself is a little annoying. However, the main thing we need this for at 2 copies is the inheritable. During your turn, this Digimon gets 3000 DP. Now remember guys, what is the best deck of the format? It is going to be Guardromon, and on average it can be around 13k, maybe sometimes even 15k. So then that's why we have to run this at 2 copies to make sure that we are always able to run it over. Think about it, alright? With the Machinedramon, it's already 14k, and with the Chaosdramon, it is now 15k. Able to run over any generic Guardromon, and with this, we're able to even run over a Guardromon with a Yuya buff as well. And let's not forget, we still have the 1 copy of the Megadramon as well. So that means if we just have a Mugendramon, this is already 16,000 power, pretty much guaranteeing to run over any kind of Guardromon that gets in your way. And that is exactly why I said power is incredibly important in this format. But we're not done with level 5s. We are a Machinedramon deck after all. We have to run even more level 5s. We run 2 copies of the Megadramon. Now, Megadramon is a very, very powerful card, and it has a very simple effect. When digivolving, we can delete one of our opponent's Digimon or Tamers with a play cost of 3 or less. And it has the exact same effect as the inheritable as long as our Digimon is a machine or dragonkin, which obviously Mugendramon is a machine type. What makes this card so good? For being 4 cost to evolve is a little bit pricey, but it can be very useful in order to choke our opponent out and also control our opponent's board a little bit. And the inheritable is incredibly powerful for getting rid of our opponent's important Tamers or Digimon. Think about it. There is Rina, there is Cool Boy, all the Cross Heart Tamers that are basically 3 costs. Being able to control our opponent's board and or kill our opponent's Tamers is going to be very useful. It's even good against Jesmon too, because let's be honest, the most important thing that the Jesmon needs is their blocker Sistermon. So as long as we're able to pop it, there's going to be no Sistermon blocking to protect their Jesmon, so we can easily run it over if we so desired. And last but not least, we have the bread and butter of how we're going to be able to constantly run over our opponent's Digimon. We don't run not 1, not 2, but 3 of the BT8 Metalgreymon. Now, I'm sure you guys all know what this card does, considering you guys have probably seen plenty of Guardromon deck profiles by now. But just in case you guys don't know, it has the effect of when digivolving, de-digivolve one of our opponent's Digimon by 1, as well as pop our opponent's Digimon that is 3k DP or less. Pretty solid removal, but the main thing we're going to be using it for is the inheritable. While this Digimon has Dragonkin or Machine in its traits, we can attack our opponent's unsuspended Digimon. So not only does Guardromon get to do it, we get to do it too. So as long as we have this underneath one of our Mugendramons or Chaosdramons, we're going to be able to constantly put pressure of having a board that can always attack our opponent's unsuspended Digimon, punishing them for being able to play anything on the board. And as you may remember, we have stuff like the MetalTyrannomon, the Metalgreymon, or even the Volcanomon. We're going to be able to swing at our opponent's Digimon, trash an opponent's security, maybe even pierce, and even get security attack +1 on it as well. This by itself is the main level 5 that we want to see as much as possible, and that is why we run 3 copies. Never again will we ever have to worry about not seeing it in our mills or in even our hands. And because we run 3 copies, we don't even feel bad about evolving it in raising. As long as we have it in raising, it's going to be perfectly safe for whatever opponent wants to try and do to it, and then we can follow it up with a Machinedramon or a Chaosdramon, respectively, on the following turn. And even save it for removal later. Whew, now that was a very big chunk, now wasn't it? But now we're going to be going to level 4s, which is a lot more simpler. We run 4 copies of none other than the EX1 Guardromon. He has a very simple ability of blocker and obviously cannot attack, but the main thing we're going to be using it for is its inheritable, which is, in my opinion, is the best inheritable. It has the inheritable effect of, when attacking, you may trash 1 Digimon card from our hand that's machine or cyborg in order to draw 2 cards from our deck. Able to cycle and able to dig for our pieces whenever we need it. And remember, from the BT11 Mugendramon, we're able to add a cyborg or a machine type either into our hand or underneath it as a source. So that includes the Guardromon as well. So if we just have a Guardromon underneath already in our stack, Mugendramon can actually put another one in the stack if we manage to see it in our top 5. Being able to swing at our opponent's security, be able to trash 2 cards and then draw 4 cards from our top of our deck. Very, very useful at deck thinning and being able to find exactly what we need in order to answer whatever opponent tries to do to us. And that's why we run it at 4 copies. And to round off our level 4s, we run 2 copies of the numemon as well. Now, quite frankly, I was actually torn on whether I want to run numemon or the tankmon. The key thing that we wanted to use it for is the 1-cost evolution, and I wanted to run tankmon as well because it is a machine type, and which means that it's also discard fodder potentially for Guardromon as well as other effects in our deck. But the reason why I opted to go for numemon in this tournament is because it's a 3-cost to hard play. Sometimes we just brick, and when there's no mulligans, anything can happen. So sometimes you just need to have a 3-cost body to hard play, and then evolve into our ultimates and just snowball that way. But if you wanted to run the tankmon, I can also recommend that as well, and I think that's also a very solid option. So this one's up to personal preference, honestly. And now we're going to be going into our level 3s, our stepping stones in order to make all the way up into our Mugendramons. So we run 4 copies of none other than, of course, our good buddy, BT7 Dorumon. Now, obviously, the arm play is meant for the X-Antibody archetype, which obviously this deck doesn't run any other than itself, so I guess if you were feeling risky, you could hard play it in order to check the top 3 and get another Dorumon, but that effect is going to be a lot more useful when Chaosdramon X comes out. But the main reason why we run 4 copies of this card is because it has the inheritable effect where, when one of your effects places a Digivolution card underneath this Digimon, we gain 1 memory. Now, keep in mind that's not restricted to X-Antibodies, so if we use effects like the Mugendramon or the Chaosdramon, we're going to be able to get ourselves 1 extra memory. So, instead of paying 3 costs or even 4 costs for a Chaosdramon, we will only be having to pay 2 or even 3 for our boss monsters, which we know is a very, very powerful reduction. Or even if we're evolving on top of a Mugendramon. Remember, it only costs 1 for Chaosdramon if on top of a Mugendramon, so that means with Dorumon, it can actually even be free. A very solid play extension all around, and that is exactly why we run it at 4 copies. And for the other level 3s, I run 3 copies of the BT6 Chikurimon. And the reason why I opted to play this is because this was my meta call and respect towards OTK decks. Unfortunately for OTK decks, we don't really have anything that can keep up with it per se, so just having more things that are scary in our security is going to be very important. For example, Dorimon. This deck literally has 0 answer that can kill a Dorimon in security. So a Chikurimon could be just the thing we need in order to save our butts. But if you wanted to though, you could totally run the floodgates like the Chikurimon. That is an anti-reduce floodgate to make sure that they can't digicross for cheap. Or you can also run the Chumon to make sure they can't gain memory from effects like memory boost. And it's honestly a pretty good meta call considering decks like Black Guardromon exists that kill a whole bunch of Tamers, which means floodgates that reduce memory gaining by effects and not by Tamers is going to be proving even more useful in this meta. But the reason why I opted not to run it is because I wanted to have an answer against OTK decks, and also I personally think that the floodgate cards are too easy to out normally anyway. Like literally, Black Guardromon can kill a floodgate while evolving up into its normal stack combo. So that's why I opted to go with Chikurimon instead. And lastly, to round off our level 3s, I run 2 copies of the Hagurumon. Now, normally this might be seeming like a crazy idea because I normally people like to run this at 4. Even I myself like to run run it at 4, but if you actually think about it, we don't really need to run it at 4 unless we're like bricking super hard. Because ideally, we want to evolve up a full stack, and which means that we are going to actually be using effects like the Guardromon to get our +1s instead. Which means that we're going to be filtering our hand plenty of times, and instead of playing Hagurumon, we could be hard playing better cards in order to make sure our deck is a lot more consistent, rather than just playing a rookie that's most likely just going to die. This was the card that I found after months and months of playtesting and labbing. And honestly, once I figured out what the card was, you guys are probably going to laugh at me a little bit. We run 3 copies of none other than Black Memory Boost. Now, for those of you who don't know what Black Memory Boost does, I'll be very impressed. But it has the very simple effect of when main, you may reveal the top 4 cards of our deck, add a black Digimon card from among them and add it to our hand and send the rest on the bottom of our deck. And it also has the delay effect of we may trash this card from our battle area in order to gain 2 memory. And of course, when we check it in security, we get to play it in our battle area for free as well. Now, this card was honestly a card that, when you think about it, goddamn, this card really is good. But why doesn't every Machinedramon deck play it? Well, it's actually quite simply. It's the first effect of we get a Digimon card to our hand, but then we bottom deck everything else. And every other Mugendramon deck, you would see usually 1 to 2 ofs of their level 5s, which means that a majority of the time, you may be bottom decking combos that you really need. But often enough, when I was playing with the deck and testing it, I often found myself getting choked a lot. And God forbid we rely on a Tamer to make sure that we get our memory, especially with Black Wargreymon running around. So, after a bunch of banging my head against the wall, I decided, you know what? What if I just ran Black Memory Boost? And this improved the consistency of the deck immensely. Now we are way more likely to be able to get the perfect stack that we need, and I often notice that whenever I'm able to resolve Megadramon from BT11, we would often just be winning the game, because being able to mill 5 is huge, and as you know, Black Memory Boost pretty much guarantees us 3 memory on the following turn. Pretty much when I discovered this change and you started using Black Memory Boost in my decks, I started pretty much farming them and just being able to sit with them whenever I need to use them. Against Black Wargreymon decks, a lot of the times the Black Wargreymon players would just be like, damn, where the hell are your Tamers? And I would just respond with, I don't need them to beat you. And that's exactly why Black Memory Boost is so clutch, being able to get the perfect stack and guarantee the memory whenever we need it. And as I said before, the floodgates are too easy to out, so often enough, people just aren't going to be playing them, or if they do play them, we can just easily out them with our own stuff like Metalgreymon or Megadramon respectively. So all in all, this is a pretty safe card to pick, and honestly, I do not regret it at all running this at 3 copies. It feels amazing. That's not all for our option cards. We still have the most powerful option card in the entire deck. We have to run 3 copies of our big boy option, the Attack of the Heavy Mobile Digimon, introduced in BT9. Now, this card is incredibly powerful. For those of you who don't know what it does, it has the effect of main, you may trash 1 card with Cyborg or Machine type in its traits from our hand, and for the rest of this turn, all of our level 6 Machine type gain Rush, and on play, if this Digimon has a Digivolution card underneath it, it can Blitz as well. So that means even with only 1 memory, let's say take for example our Mugendramon from BT11, we can actually hard play this for 11, check the top 5 cards of our deck, and get a Machine or Cyborg underneath it as a source in order to Blitz for game. And that applies to all of our level 6s as well. All of them have an on-play effect of being able to get sources underneath, which means that as long as we have 1 or 2 memory, we're going to be able to have a Blitzer whenever we need it, and potentially get ourselves a big body to answer whatever our opponent has to throw at us. There are going to be plenty of times where if we go ahead and have our Chaosdramon or our Mugendramon taken out by, say, something like a Black Wargreymon, we can immediately retaliate with this card, essentially countering them on the backswing. And also has the security effect of we can trash a Digimon card with Cyborg or Machine type in its traits in order to delete one of our opponent's Digimon that is of that same play cost or lower. So as if our opponent is not careful, we can potentially get rid of our opponent's stack or get rid of any potential bodies that can swing at us for extra checks. And also make sure you keep in mind that this card has the effect of, for the rest of this turn, all of our level 6 Digimon with Machine type gain Rush, which means that if we are ever so happen to bring out 2 of our Machinedramons in play, they're both going to be able to rush and potentially get a lot of value on this following turn. And that also applies to the Blitz effect as well, and that can also come in for a combo that I will show during the combo parts of this video. Running off our options, we do run 1 copy of the Ultimate Connection here. Now, if you ever so desired, you could put this as a 4th copy of our Black Memory Boost, but I'm opting to run a Ultimate Connection instead. Is for having the option of having more scary things in security, potentially ending our opponent's turn if they're not careful, or just extending our plays. Remember, a lot of the times in this meta especially, people are often just going to be able to predict what exactly is the extent of what your deck can do based on the amount of memory they give you, but cards like Hammer Spark, or in this case Ultimate Connection, can potentially extend our plays just enough in order to lead into a rather explosive play. One memory can do a lot for this deck. And finally, to round things off, we run 3 Tamers in this deck, and the 3 Tamers are going to be the Analog Man. Now, this card is a significant consistency buff to the entire deck while also adding defensive capabilities. For those of you who aren't aware what Analog Man does, he has the effect where, at the start of our main phase, by trashing a level 5 card with Cyborg in his traits from our hand, we're able to gain a memory and draw a card, essentially a free cycle and a free Ultimate Connection every single turn, which is only why I can get away with running only 1 copy. And it also has the other effect of, during our opponent's turn, as long as our opponent's Digimon is attacking a player, we can suspend it in order to redirect it to one of our level 6 machine types. So with this, we can actually get away with running less blockers in our deck, and with running inheritables like the MetalTyrannomon, for example, we can redirect our opponent's Digimon attacks to our level 6 Digimon and potentially trash our opponent's security during our opponent's turn if they are not careful. And you know for a fact that as card gamers, not many people are going to be able to read your effects, so if they're not careful, they're just going to run into this, and then all of a sudden, oh, there you go, there goes another of your security, or there you go, there goes your stack all of a sudden, because my Machinedramon is just going to redirect your attacks. And keep in mind, because it is a redirection, not a blocking effect, that would mean that we can actually use it as long as our machine is on the field. So even if it's suspended, we can redirect the attacks, and even if it's frozen by something like Blue Flare, it will still be able to redirect the attacks to them, punishing them for trying to swing at our security. And the reason why I'm opting to run 3 copies instead of 4 is because I personally found 4 to be a little bit too bricky. A lot of the times we really just need to have 1 or maybe even 2 on the board, and based on how I like to play this deck, it's actually a lot more useful to play it out after you've already established your stack, which I can pretty much explain once we actually get to the combo portion of this video yet again. And finally, to finish up the deck, I'm opting to run 4 copies of the Dorimon. Dorimon is going to be acting as our Digitama here, and it's honestly going to be the best Digitama going into BT12 onwards, because it has the effect where your turn, once per turn, when one of your effects places a Digivolution card underneath it as a source, we're able to draw a card. A blind draw in this deck is going to be very useful, but honestly, in this meta, you can opt to run the Hagurumon as well. I was honestly pretty much 50-50 in deciding between the Hagurumon or the Dorimon in this deck. The benefits of having the Hagurumon is that we're able to actually swing early with our Digimon and potentially get value if they die in security, which usually our rookies are pretty small, so there's a very good chance that it'll die, and it's very, very useful for if we brick. But the reason why I opted to play with this instead of having the Hagurumon is because I believe that MegaEggs is still a deck that I'm most likely to see in Nationals, which means I definitely do not want to give my Digimon an on-deletion effect if I can avoid it. And honestly, Dorimon can do the effect just as well, except that you have to keep in mind it only works when you're already kind of winning in the game. So Hagurumon is a very good card for when you are bricking, whereas Dorimon is a great card when you are already winning. So that one's up to you. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, and now it is time for the oh-so-beloved, the combo portion of the deck. How exactly do we want to play with our Megadramon strategy, and why did I feel so confident in bringing this deck to the tournament? Well, it's actually quite simple. Now, for a bit of backstory, normally how the deck would operate is that you were just trying to mill yourself out as soon as possible to just get your key level 5s in your trash, and then you can potentially try to use your on-plays with using cards like the Attack of the Heavy Mobile Digimon in order to get yourself your EX1 Machinedramon in order to get your immediate value of getting a good level 6 out for only 7 cost, and potentially swinging and answering our opponent's board and doing whatever. However, that is actually a lot of investment. It's actually a lot more better now to just evolve all the way up. So if anything, what you really want to see is have a Dorimon and evolve it right up into a Dorumon, then evolve it into a Guardromon, and then have something like a Metalgreymon, and then have something like a Black Memory Boost in your battle area. Something like this would be a pretty good stack to leave off with. And let's see where we can go from here. So when we actually start off, no matter what memory our opponent gives us, we are guaranteed to go to 3 with the Black Memory Boost. We can then promote up with our Metalgreymon, use the Black Memory Boost, then go into a Megadramon, get ourselves a Mill 5, maybe get a Source, maybe not, who knows, honestly. And then from there, we can evolve it into a Chaosdramon, and because we haven't used the Dorumon yet, or if we did already, we would have the extra memory to go into it for basically free, and then get ourselves 3 more sources. From that point on, then we can actually play something like an Analog Man. And from there, this by itself believe it or not, is a checkmate board status against a Black Wargreymon player. Now let's actually think about this. How is this a checkmate board status? Well, as you know, Black Wargreymon has access to cards like Metalgreymon, which digivolves one of our Digimon by 1. So if we digivolve the Chaosdramon here, we go back into a Mugendramon, which means that at any point, this could be a ticking time bomb where that if they just try to swing at our security or at our Digimon, doesn't really matter. We're just going to be able to redirect it with the analog man right into here, and then when it dies, we're going to be able to use the on deletion effect to send the analog man to the bottom of our deck, and then play a Mugendramon from our hand for free, potentially gaining even more memory and ending our opponent's turn preemptively. The only way they actually get over this stack is if they go into a Gaiomon, which means they would have to use a Gaiomon to de-digivolve our Digimon and then swing at our opponent's Digimon, meaning they are not actually doing damage to our security, giving us plenty of time to come back on the backswing. Or if they wanted to get rid of this entire stack and the analog man, they're going to have to look to pay potentially 10 memory using something like Hades Force to delete our analog man, and then using the X antibody to pay 5 memory again to go and evolve into a Mega to get rid of our Digimon. Then they can actually get rid of this stack without having to do anything. But then they're giving us 9 to 10 memory, which means that we can bring out a Machinedramon with thanks to the attack of the heavy mobile Digimon while not passing our turn, and then just pretty much hitting them on the backswing yet again. That's why I said it is a checkmate board status. And this works both ways, not even having the BT11 Machinedramon in hand, which further explains as to why I run 3 copies of the EX1 Machinedramon. Because now, by running 3, we can actually evolve into an EX1 Machinedramon in Raising without ever having to worry about it, because we have 2 more copies in our deck to potentially draw into. Because now, by having a Mugendramon in Raising, we can now then move it up and then evolve it into a Chaosdramon for only 1 memory, which we are guaranteed to have to for at least to even start our turn, and then get ourselves 3 sources. And then if they try to get over this by say digivolving, the Mugendramon will guarantee to have 4 level 5s at maximal underneath it, so that means it can protect itself at least once. And because we run 4 copies of the Chaosdramon, we could then just evolve into the Chaosdramon yet again. So that the only way they can get rid of this board now is if they digivolve it a second time with a Gaiomon, which, as I said before, in order to do that, they have to pay 5 memory, giving us on average 3 to 5 memory to work with, which is just enough for us to attack of the heavy mobile Digimon and come back with them on the backswing. We can even use the attack of the heavy mobile Digimon to hard play ourselves a Chaosdramon as well. The key note to think here, we're able to answer a Black Wargreymon or any big stack they have to throw at us, and then basically they have to spend another turn to rebuild back up yet again. And because of how the summoning sickness in this game works, they're not going to be able to answer this right away, which means we get a whole turn of value after it already swung. So we get a free turn of swinging twice with it, which could just be enough to win the game right then and there. Now, I think it's time for us to actually address the elephant in the room. I truly was really confident in the deck list that I made. It took me 4 months of non-stop grinding and labbing to finally perfect the list that I decided to bring to Nationals. But if I was so confident in it, why didn't I win? Well, for those of you who watched the stream, it was pretty obvious. I got unlucky in the very last 2 rounds. As you saw on stream against the Crossheart player, game 1, he hit that last security Taiki in order to be able to get enough swings in order to kill me. And in game 2, I just bricked. It is what it is. And I was totally fine with losing that way. And then in round 9, I was up against a Grandis Kuwagamon, where unfortunately in games 1 and 3, he drew the exact perfect stack to get his full OTK combo off. I literally only had 2 turns to play. But even then, me being X2 gave me a very solid chance to win, considering that one of the people that I lost to in day 1 was undefeated. So I thought actually having a pretty good chance with my tiebreakers. But unfortunately, I bubbled out. I came in 38th. In perspective, it's still pretty good. It's the top 4%, but you cannot believe how crushed I was when I did not make top 32. It was just truly unfortunate. When I saw the decks that made the top 32 spots, I thought for myself, damn, I know for sure I would have been able to win those matchups. I just needed a little bit more luck, and I think if I just even was able to scrape by in top 32, I might have had a good chance to take it all. But that's just not the timeline we live in, unfortunately. And for those of you who still doubt my list, within those 4 months of me constantly grinding and labbing this out, I was bullying my friends with this deck. I bullied 2 of my friends so bad that they decided, you know what, Ben, your deck is kind of good. I actually want to play it. And would you believe me if I told you, they brought their own variations of this deck. The main core was still the same. They obviously added their own variations. They were able to get top 200, one of them being 115th and the other one at 190th respectively, beating up any Black Wargreymon players they saw in their way. So just seeing that alone made me feel a little bit better about myself. It truly is a really fun list, and in the right hands, I think it's honestly one of the best decks of the format. I'm not sure if they actually read out my quote when I was playing on stream, but I want this to be a lesson to all of you, aspiring deck builders out there. Don't conform to what other players say are the best decks of the format. The Digimon TCG is such a deep and interesting card game that you can truly make anything work if you put in the time. Cause let's be real, was anyone really looking at Machinedramon? Hello, Ben from the future here. Just wanted to give a quick shout out to my boys over at Oceania. I did see that there was in fact a Machinedramon player that topped over there in National, so huge congratulations to him. As you can see, it seems that his list was also focusing on the Black Evolution line, focusing on evolving all the way up into a Mega and getting its value that way. Although I did notice that it's not running Black Memory Boost, which in my opinion falls a little bit short against the Black Guardromon matchup. But I'll leave that to you guys in the comments. Which list do you guys think is better, mine or his? Maybe we can have a little match to see and find out. Alright, but that's it. That's the end of the feature segment. I just want to say a big congratulations to my fellow Machinedramon brethren. And that's it for the deck profile. Hope you guys all enjoyed. I'm honestly really excited what other potential future decks you may have in store. You could be the next person that breaks the mold. Don't let anyone stop you from innovating. And I guess I'll have to see you guys next year, because I'm winning next time. Bye-bye, everybody.